right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's start off that discussion on mental health awareness. This is a conversation we've had before, but it is important that we keep having it until we are out of the woods, because there's a situation that's going on right now. 483 people committed suicide in just 3 months. That is a concern from the DCI because it is somehow linked to mental health, but also dealing with the coronavirus pandemic as it stands that is causing more stress on families. But what then is the way to survive? What do we do? How do we come out of this? That's a conversation we're supposed to have this morning. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's all have a conversation around this because it's affecting every one of us. It's affecting the people who are closest to us and family members as well. But nobody has that one single solution. We have to talk about it as a team and as a people. Honorable Sylvia Kasanga is joining me, nominated senator. She's joining us online. Thank you for making time. We're waiting for retired Major Wairimu Mukuria, who's a psychologist. She'll also be joining us online in just a bit. Daddy Owen, who's a recording artist, is on his way here. As soon as he comes in, we'll also have the conversation with him. And Aunt Trufena is here. She's a counseling psychologist joining me here in studio. Honorable Kasanga, I'll start with you. What really do you think is this current situation? And what is the way forward? Because today I just want to focus on how do we resolve this? Where are we and how do we resolve it?
Well, thank you, Trevor, and thank you for having me as always. And like rightfully you said, let us continue having this conversation because we must. I truly hope the internet shall hold. I'm actually in the village. I truly hope that the internet will hold. And Trevor, the situation is dire, and it has been now for some time. And what we are seeing, the statistics that we are seeing now coming out, you know, is wonderful. It's good that we have data now beginning to show the situation that we are actually dealing with. And besides the cases that we saw of suicide, Trevor, there's also a study that has also shown the impact on COVID on adolescents. And a lot of it is going to suggest that we have a serious mental health crisis at our hands, as we had actually anticipated, and you know, our conversations have always drawn to that fact that we have a population, we have a people that is really truly ailing. And you know, it's good that the statistics are now there, and we are beginning to collate the statistics so that we can now know really the length and the breadth of the impact on our people, and now how do we now begin to resolve this issue. And like rightfully you said, a lot of awareness is required. We need to really talk about this issue, and we really need to tell Kenyans that when you're not feeling like yourself, when you're feeling that you know, you've not been to your best or your best capacity, you're not, you know, actively participating in building the nation or being in the person that you are in whatever that you do, then it's important to, you know, open up and begin to look for help. Speak to people around you. And it's also pointing to the fact that as Kenyans, we need to really reach out to each other. You know, it's now, this is a conversation that has to be mainstreamed, that we must learn to reach out to each other, and we must begin to learn to be gentle towards each other, because you don't know what the person next to you is actually going through. This empathy that we are now discussing here is something we must mainstream within our lives, within our everyday lives. Because if we don't do that, then we are now going to really not begin to pull this, you know, Trevor, you've rightfully put it, that we have to work together as a society, as a community. We really must now come together and hold hands and say, we must move together, we must begin to resolve this issue. Even as much as we are saying, what is the government doing? Yes, the government is beginning to put some structures into place. That one, I can tell you, Trevor, I am privy to some of the actions that the government is doing. And, you know, for the first time, we have a budget that is specifically for mental health that has gone, you know, into the current budget. And that's a good thing. But even as the government is beginning to put these structures into place, considering they have come, where they've come from is where it's far, as a population, we have a duty towards each other as a people. And this empathy, we really must begin to reach out. We must really continue talking about it. We have to fight the stigma from having these conversations like what you're doing, Trevor, here. This platform is beautiful that we have this conversation now. And I'm happy a lot more media houses are beginning to pick, but it's a conversation that now must be mainstream to the workplace, to the family at home. We have to really have this conversation. At the schools, we have to have this conversation. Everywhere in church, this conversation must be had. And Trevor, when I saw the statistics on adolescents, a lot of mental health issues, and the psychologists will tell us, begin when, from that young age of adolescence and even slightly below that, from young children. They manifest over a period of time if they're not dealt with. So having seen the impact of COVID on our young people, then we know we really must mainstream mental health in our everyday life, in our conversations, Trevor. So I really thank this platform for this conversation of trying to raise the awareness and continuing to speak about it and calling out Kenyans. Let's hold our hands, let's walk together in this journey.
Yeah. And
Trevor.
Trifena, what's really going on right now? Because what Honorable Kasanga is saying, that there's a massive impact on adolescents. When we were growing up, is it that the situation was different then, or we were just not as vocal?
Not like in the past, because you will realize that when we were growing up, or the people who were before us, there was no social media, there was no internet, and there was no that too much exposure to things like movies or operas and all that, soap operas and all that. So what I'm thinking is our teenagers are also exposed to too much.
Yeah.
Beyond the way they are supposed to comprehend. Because for now, Trevor, you realize that even the little child has a phone. And Wi-Fi's, they are like in all our homes. And most of our homes, they have Wi-Fi's. Even if they don't have, they will still access them through movies, through wherever they are staying and all that. And also internet has also become cheap. So it's not like earlier. Earlier, to access a phone, it was a real, you have to put real effort. But for now, people are too exposed. Another thing, it's also because of what we are seeing on TV, and also our teenagers are forgetting that the people who are there, they are just acting. There are people on employment, there are people looking for money. So our teenagers, because of their fresh minds, they always think that that is what life is supposed to be. They always think that life is as smooth as that, as what they are seeing on the screen. But unfortunately, it's not. So I think the parents can also try to educate their teens that whatever you are seeing in these movies, whatever you are seeing in your screens, these are just people who are acting, not real life. In real life, they are different. And it is important to stay real.
Yeah. But now that's where the other issue comes in. Should we then foster almost a culture of staying oblivious of what's going on? Because you can't now, when you have a teenager, for example, and that's one of the places where there's an impact, and Mweshimiwa was talking about them, should you then now curtail certain things, or is it a losing war? Do you stop them from not having phones? Do you control them from accessing TVs and all that? What do you do now?
I would advocate for educating them, because when a person is directed on a tough journey and he is made aware of whatever that journey is, he goes through that journey not really as blind, but remembering what he or she was told. So, these teenagers, even if you deny them phone, they will still have them. A parent was telling me that he has never bought a phone for her teenage girl. But one time he just popped in the bedroom abruptly, and the girl was there with a smartphone, So even if we won't buy for them, they will still have them. I'm not saying that they should be given everything, but what I'm saying, suppose we educate them on safety measures of how to use the internet. Because I think when we give them guidelines, they will not move away so much from them. Then again, knowledge is power. When we put knowledge to our teenagers, even as he is scrolling and as he is closing the app and opening the other app, he or she will still have that knowledge that I was told that I should not go through there. But when we stop them all together and we stop the education on the dangers of the internet, then we haven't helped them, because they haven't gained knowledge from us. They will take it like it's a punitive measure. It's like we don't want them to know. And you see, a teenager is always very exploring. They always like to explore. Yeah. So other than stopping them altogether, I think it is important we educate them on the safety measures of the internet world.
Okay. Yeah. Honorable Kasanga, from the research that you've seen, what really is the impact on adolescents and what are the recommendations there?
Well, Trevor, this was a news item that was in one of the dailies, and this was a study that was done by the Population Council, Presidential Policy and Strategy Unit, and you can see it was sanctioned specifically for this, to assess the impact of COVID-19 on adolescents in Kenya. And whereas I am actually looking for the actual report, once I find it, I will definitely publish it on my pages. But one of the issues they highlighted here was that 328 girls got pregnant in the first year of the pandemic. And you see, you can attribute this to the lockdowns that were had, you know, with our adolescents being at home and not being in school. And like the psychologists in the panel is saying, you know, our young people are they love to explore. They're very curious, rightfully, at their age. And when these children were locked down last year, you can see the impact of it, you know, you can see the impact of it. And a lot of this also was, when I look at the report, a lot of it was also talking about, you know, nearly half the adolescents reported experiencing symptoms related to depression as well. That is nearly half of the adolescents talking about depression. And then, of course, there was the physical violence that was happening in homes and in places of which are supposed to be safe spaces. I mean, when you read this report, then you can see how bad the situation has been. I'm actually really looking for this report so that we can have very candid conversations around the interventions that we will need to have for our adolescents going forward in terms of education and, you know, all that stuff. So I'm looking for it, and I know one of the things the psychologist is saying is actually also pointing towards parenting. And now this is a very personal comment I'm making, because at home now we cannot disregard the fact that we have to have tough conversations with our children. Now gone are the days when you would leave it to the teachers to do this. The conversations have to be had at home, and they are tough conversations, sincerely speaking. When you see about 328,000 girls got pregnant, then there's something pointing towards also sex education. You know, what we have control of as parents is the fact that we have to have these conversations with our children at home. And you know, it's the information age, Trevor. We cannot run away from the fact that children have access to information. Whether they have a gadget or not, they will get that information from the next child. You know, you may ring fence your child in a bubble, but I can assure you, you can't lock that child up in a room where then they cannot access that information. They will get it one way or another from their fellow children. So I think the thing is to strengthen our children, have these tough conversations with them as parents. And it is tough for us. Many of us, I mean, this generation that we are, the way we were brought up is very different from how we have to bring up our children today. The approach has to be completely different, Trevor. So I am seeing a situation here when that report, the full report, when we get it, these conversations must be had at home, in school, in church, in workplaces, everywhere. We have to have this candid conversation about our adolescents. After all, they are the future nation, and we have to find ways of mitigating the impact that definitely has caused them a lot of trauma going forward, Trevor.
Yeah. That is very true. But Antrufena, what format should these conversations take? Because, you know, there's also that feeling from some parents sometimes that when you meet a young teenager and they're all acting up, they're like, you need adolescents too. Amapana, huyu anajifanya. So where do you draw the line that you know now this is a mental health situation? This other one is just a teenager acting up.
Displaying case.
A teenager being himself or herself. Now, there are so many signs that a parent can actually detect whether his or her child is having some mental illness. Every teenager, you know, a teen is going through a stage of transition. He or she is transiting from childhood to adulthood. And because of that, this is a person who is probably confused. he doesn't know what to do, because the transition also comes with kind of stress. But now that one is natural. This is where the teen kind of withdraws and all that. But there are also signs that this teen can show that he has a problem. For example, they can also have acute withdrawal. They are not withdrawing because they want to go through their phones. They are just withdrawing to stay alone. When you just see your teen having a lot of withdrawal and not wanting to talk to anyone, that is a sign that probably he is going through some mental instability. Another thing is a lot of anxiety, and every time you meet your teen in the table room, you want to go to the bedroom. When you go there, you can't see eye to eye. And when he or she is in school, you are being called so often that your teenager is doing this and these, signs of restlessness. Instead of disciplining, even if you mix with discipline, it is important also to seek psychological help to your teen. Because at teenage, that is where now secrets begin. A child from 10 years and below, that one can tell you anything. I want to go somewhere, today I met anybody. But now, when they start now from teenage, they start being so secretive. And that is what the members of society who want to exploit them use. They use a lot of, because they know that teenagers are very secretive. That is how they get into drug abuse, they get into gangs and everything without the parent knowledge. But I always say, if these people can be talked by others and get entered into those gangs and those groups, even the parents, they should also learn the language that those people are using so that they can use it for their children. Because you'll go along the street and the parents are saying, I don't understand my teenager, this is a very bad stage. But your teenager is talking to someone else out there. He or she is pouring his heart out there. So you should know the tactics. One way of bringing a teenager on your side is giving him or her identity. Once a teenager identifies himself with you, that is it. You have won him. You have won his heart. And that is when you know definitely when your child is going through issues. Because, Trevor, again, you cannot know a person who is not your friend. And it is unfortunate because we are not friends to our children. We are only parents, but we should also be friends to them. Because when even you in natural, you always know your friends. There are times unamuuliza umenyamaza sana, I see you have changed, today you have stress and all that. But if your child is not your friend, you might not know. It is also important to know when your child is planning to harm others. Because we have seen even cases whereby a brother is also killing a brother, and the parent does not know. The parent always says that, I thought they were brothers, and we are also seeing a case where a child is also killing his own parents. I think these are the signs that we are supposed to learn from our children early enough, whether they are grown up, whether they are married, because we end up being the victims. We end up being affected, even if specifically we are not harmed. When our members of the family are harmed, then we are also affected in a very negative way. So it is very important to know the mind, what goes around the mind of a person who is potential to commit suicide or who is a potential killer in our society. But we can only know that by being friends to our children.
Yeah. And Honorable Kasanga, you spoke about empathy, but also, you know, the tricky thing about empathy is it then also comes with a bit of judgment here and there, especially if you open up to the wrong person. Now, how do you then decide this is the person to talk to?
Yeah, I know, Trevor, that one is a tough one. How do you know who to talk to? How do you ring-fence yourself with the right sort of people or the people who can be there for you? And I think this is a bit of a process in creating a strong relationships with people around you who can walk with you throughout life. And again, you know, this has a lot to do with also our emotional intelligence. I can speak to it in the sense of emotional intelligence, that then you make the right social connections that then they can work back for you in the moments when you're feeling a bit low and things like that. And also there's also the religious angle to this, and why our church then becomes a key pillar to these conversations, because there's comfort that we find in the hope that religion gives us. And Trevor, whereas I may not have that exact answer, because then I leave this to the practitioners to help us with this kind of conversation. Just allow me also to just highlight, some of the reasons why we've seen a lot of suicide cases. And, because I was privy to, chairing the ad hoc committee last year. And last year, when the COVID pandemic hit and we went into lockdowns, and there was a lot of interventions towards how to mitigate the impact economically. A lot of businesses were affected. No money, there was no business. And, this impact of it, whereas we were beginning to have a conversation on how to mitigate that impact last year, once the lockdowns and the economy was opened up, we forgot what impact that would roll over to this day today. There are some businesses that have really never picked up even since that time. There are loans that have never been, people have not been able to pay their loans, even if, the effect happened last year. To this day, it still rolls over. And when we look at the social determinants of mental health, they cut across every aspect of life. But because of the nature of our lifestyles today, the economy and finances become very central to a lot of us. And when there's no money, then the stress definitely comes in. When you're not able to pay the loans and everyone is coming after you, because we've seen a lot of such cases, then this really affects our mental wellness. And Trevor, this here is the reason why this conversation has to be cross-cutting all across. And one of the things that we are saying that is so critical come next year's politics is who is giving us a solution on our economy, because that is the thing that is really killing a lot of the Kenyans today. A lot of us today are really ailing from the poor economy, and it is really, really affecting households. And this conversation, again, Kenyans have to rise to the occasion on who is the leader you're going to have, who's going to build back the economy to a point where at least we can put food on our tables. We can take our children to school without worrying where their sustenance is going to come from. And, all this conversation around the economy, Trevor. But largely, just to answer your question, is about, the people who are around you, who can give you that empathy at the time when you are low. I know even sometimes the family, which is supposed to be the thing that holds you up, for a lot of Kenyans today, the family space is also a challenge. I mean, we've seen in the lockdowns and the domestic violence that has affected not just women, but boys and young girls. That also becomes a very big challenge when the home space is not a safe haven. Then where are the structures to give the safe havens to our children, to our mothers, and even young boys, and even our fathers in that sense? So again, Trevor, this is the conversation that we are having. Whereas I may not have an answer right now, this is still the conversation that we must be having.
Yeah. Well, it's not a one answer fits all, really. It's not a one size fits all, Antrufena, because when it comes to talking, also there's the aspect of family, and then there's the aspect of judgment, but also there's the aspect of they are not professionals. So in the event that you're actually having a mental breakdown, they wouldn't know what to do. Just talking to them is not enough. So what do you do now in that case?
Now, as Mheshimiwa has mentioned, it's a whole talk, and we have to look at different aspects of who you are talking to. We have counselors, and counselors are also a bit few, because it is not every household that has a counselor. But what I always say is that sharing is kind of also giving away the psychological burden that you have. It is important to know that when you are talking, even if you are afraid we will not have a solution, but the act of talking, you are also kind of getting out of that psychological trap just by talking. Yeah. That is why people are also talking in the wrong avenues, like in social media. But I would rather every person has a trusted friend or a family member. You can choose one and talk to. I am also sad. I am always saddened by people who always say that, you know, I never reached a counselor. But it is not a must that you keep quiet until you get a psychologist. Sometimes it is important to open up to your significant other in terms of your closest family member or a trusted friend. The other thing is we should also be careful of the avenues that we are seeking help. Like, for example, you can also go to a counselor who is a quack, who will not even be able to deal with your emotions and help you process the stress that you are going through. We also have religious leaders, and these days you have seen people going to churches to seek help, and actually they become the victims. We always hear of stories where the pastors have anointed people and anointed totally. Yeah. So it is also very wise to know where you are seeking help. All those avenues are important because religious places are very, very important because that is where you seek your spiritual help. But now where? How do you know that? It is important to do a background research, even from the pastor that you are going to, even to the counselor that you are going to. And in terms of family member, you are supposed to talk to that closest family member because another people who are raising the mental health instability are the family members, because these people, they try to give you history from whatever you did in 19-something years. That is where they start saying, even remember, there is a time you did this, you did. They bring a lot of history, and you realize that patient is not ready to process, and they always lower the hope of the victim because he sees like, I'm not changing, because the people who are supposed to support me, they are there insulting me and telling me that I might not change. So not every family member can be trusted, but there is that trusted family. Then friends also, there are friends who can give you a problem and then they take a microphone and they start talking about it. And they will also start giving like it's a story now they have started. So you should also know your circle of friends, because not every shoulder that you can lean on from a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found something interesting that you mentioned on social media. So the way sometimes people open up on social media, you don't advocate for that.
Yeah,
Some
because
people sit there and just speak because essentially they're speaking to themselves because nobody is speaking back to you, or people will just make a bit snide comments here and there.
You see, when you go to social media and you start talking about yourself, one, you do not know whom you are talking to, because you are talking to people who are actually invisible. Then you are also exposing yourself too much. And I saw a post of a person saying that he wants to commit suicide. We had that case, I think, some months ago, of this guy who talked about committing suicide. And if you could have looked at the comments, the comments are taking him to the grave. People are saying, no, you are not, even us, we are going through problems and we don't care. The others, they are saying we are even burdened by the debt of the country, you know, making fun out of something. The people who tried to reach him, I think he got help. But the people who tried to kill him, they were more. Yeah? Then if you look at any time we go to social media and we see, like, for example, if you go to Citizen page and you see like so-and-so killed his lover, just to go through the comments, you will realize there are so many potential murderers. People are there, they are venting like, huwezi kula fea ya wenyewe alafu na mimi niachwe hivyo. You see, people are there, they just want to do what we are telling them not to do. So when an individual goes to social media and talks about his or her issues, chances are he will be exposed so much to vulnerability, or he can also be saved, because going by the feedback, there are people who are very positive and there are people who seek help. Once in a while, I also DM them and I tell them to seek help from me. But you see, I am now one in a few, yeah? But majority of them, they make fun. They always talk like this person is making fun. So social media is not usually the best avenue, because once again, even if you heal, the people whom you exposed yourself to, they keep reminding you. They now start making posts regarding of your situation. Yeah. But suppose you just went confidentially to a person who could have helped you, I think you could have got help silently. Okay. Because people are also taken like they are seeking attention, but most of them, they are not seeking attention. They are very serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break here. When you come back, we'll take some of your feedback and then go over to Honorable Kasanga on the government intervention so far, just to highlight them for us, what they've done so far and what the impact they expect from that in just a bit. We'll keep your views coming at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll be reading them in just a bit.